right. Welcome back to the show, everybody. Super excited. I've got Chris, I would call you a mentor. I would call you
thanks,
a
man.
former coworker, a friend, someone who I've known for a long time in the mortgage business, Chris Medellin, loanDepot. Thank you so much for joining me on the show today.
Oh man, I'm excited to be here. I mean, I started seeing you posting, like I saw your social media change, and then I saw you doing podcasts, and I was like, right on. I love that you're leaning in on it, and I'm happy that you invited me to do this, man. So thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, like I was sharing right before we started recording here on the show, you were one of the first people in the mortgage industry who I was around, at least, who really leaned in on social. And so I want to talk to you about that today. That's one of the reasons why I wanted to have you on the show. I think you've been ahead of the curve with that, which I think is super cool. But just so people know who you are, like, tell us a little bit about your background. How you got in the mortgage industry, how long you've been in it, and what are you doing now?
It's a crazy story. I mean, first off, the mortgage business, I don't think anyone grows up and is like, I want to be in the mortgage. You might have been the anomaly on that.
No, not even me.
Considering, because how we met. I don't even know if you remember. Do you know how we met?
Yeah.
So, so I'll tell that story really quickly. Like I had a brokerage, and I was leaving the brokerage. I had these investors into the brokerage, and I was a partner in it. And they pissed me off one day, and I don't think I had an entrepreneurial bone in my body at the time. And so I ended up deciding that I was going to go on like monster.com one night, and I applied for a job at Wells. And your father, Randy, was in the room because they were having like the salespeople choose who their ops partner was going to be, right? And so they all liked me because I was a sales guy applying for an ops job, and they hired me to run fulfillment for retail. Anyway, when I came over, I had this big book of business, and I had one of my realtors that was like, "Look, I need to get I don't know who to go to now because you're not doing this anymore. You're not doing loans anymore. So I need somebody who can take my calls on a weekend." So I went to my boss, and he was like, "You got to call Jeff, and Jeff will help you." And so then I connected you with my buddy, and from there, eventually I like made my way to the sales side, and then you were in my world somehow. And so I've always taken an interest in watching your growth and seeing how you've progressed in it. So it's really cool to see that. But yeah, man, I remember you coming up, and earlier, like I want to say this was like 2010, 2011.
Yeah,
when did you get into the business?
Yeah, 06. Well, 07 was when I started with Wells Fargo Home Mortgage. I was Wells Fargo Financial in 06.
Gotcha. Yeah. So then you came over, and then you crushed it, watching your growth and becoming your own loan officer, and watching how you've progressed has been a fun thing to watch, to the point that a few years back I was trying to get you to partner with me and come over and work with us. But how long have I been, and how did I get into it? I got into the mortgage industry almost by accident. I used to work in credit cards, and I got a call. We were shutting down a site in Austin, Texas, and I was part of that shutdown. I was basically laying myself off, and and I was like, but I didn't want to leave Austin. So I was like, if I could find a job in Austin, because it's like a really cool town, I'm gonna stay here. And I got a call from a recruiter because I'm putting my name out. Back then it's Monster. I guess now it's LinkedIn. When you had to have a resume. Do you have a resume anymore?
Yeah.
I don't know anybody who has a resume anymore, but I had a resume, and I was putting it out there, in the internets, and somebody called me, and they said, we have this idea that we want to build a call center for this bank. And what we want to do is drive customers to the call center so they're not going to retail people, and we can save money.
Yeah.
It was like the thought process of let's build a call center, because apparently these weren't a thing at the time. And I was like, that's over. I don't even have a mortgage. That's way over my head. Call my boss, because he's looking for a job too, and he may need to get in with you guys. And so they called him. He got the job, and I didn't understand how much you can make in mortgage.
Yeah.
And he was like, "Chris, you have no idea how much I'm making." And so I was like, all right, whatever. I'm going to stay in Austin. So I took a job with like a help desk. I was like managing help desks. Worst job I ever took. And finally I got to the point where I was like, I need to leave. This sucks. I'm not happy. So I called him, and I asked him if he can give me a job. And he was like, do you want to live in Ohio or Tampa? So I took the job in Tampa, and I moved without ever going to Tampa in my life. I just got on a plane and had a job there, and I started managing home equity. And then through that, as I ended up working so it ended up being Chase was the bank, and I ended up working my way through the call centers, and then ended up at Wells, and then now I'm in a non-bank world at loanDepot. But it's been 20 years that I've been in the industry. It's been 21, 22 years, but it's been crazy. But like starting off in home equity was probably the best place for me to be. But yeah, man, I kind of stumbled into it, and part of it was finding out how much money that you can make in mortgage was kind of life changing for me.
Yeah, it's this incredible industry with a lot of opportunity. Same thing. I grew up like with my dad in the mortgage business. I thought I will never go into the mortgage business. That sounds like the most boring career. I could never see myself doing that. I really didn't know anything about it. And then like 6 months after I'm out of college, I'm in the mortgage business working for Wells. Yeah.
How did you intern or anything, or you just went straight into it?
I went into Wells Fargo Financial. It was like a subprime arm of Wells.
Gotcha.
And they did subprime refinances, high interest rate credit cards, and
really good place to. Yeah, it's a really good place to start. I mean, because you're dealing with customers that, kind of like customers that we deal with now, that they don't have an option. Yeah. But they need money.
Yeah.
So to help them out, even if it's high interest, it was still a good way to cut your teeth into the business. So very interesting. I actually worked subprime for what they called it non-prime for a little bit with, in between there at some point.
Well, you've always been somebody who's been a really good leader. Like I can remember back at our Wells days, you were an area manager. You had to have been on the younger scale, like end of.
I think I was
scale.
The youngest. Yeah, I was
weird.
The
youngest? Yeah,
I'm not the youngest in the room anymore, but back then I was definitely the youngest in the room.
Yeah. So you've always had that innate ability. Yeah. Like I can remember you go into some of those area meetings and just the way you can command a room. I think it's a real gift.
Thanks, man.
Yeah. So now you're kind of a similar role now at loanDepot, right? Things have evolved to where you've got a network of branches.
Yeah. So I went over from once I left Wells, I didn't know what I was going to do because let's be clear, Wells left me, right? I didn't leave Wells. So I got fired from Wells for being the last one in and the first one out, laid off, whatever you want to call it. And I had to reinvent who I was in the marketplace because I realized I didn't really know a lot of people in the market. I didn't know the market, right? I worked the market. I didn't know the market. And it's not like when I left Wells, there was like a million people trying to follow me. I had to figure out how was I going to survive because it was either like you have Chase you can go to, or you can go to Bank of America. Everybody was kind of hurting at that point if you were a bank.
Yeah.
But I started walking into. I was funding, I want to say like $1 billion at the time. And I was walking around with my numbers and going basically to different non-bank lenders saying, would you hire me? And they were all like, well, how much will you do? Or how many people can you bring with you? And I was like, it's just me. And so they were like closing the door on my face. Like they were not interested in me. And so I wasn't sure what I was going to do. I mean, I knew I'd be okay. And, I'd made a lot of money at Wells. So it wasn't like I was hurting for money. I just wanted to make the right decision. And so what I did is I had somebody that I knew at Wells send me the list of everybody who left Wells over the last year and like loan officers. And so I started looking them up and I started saying, well, like you had left and I can't remember where you went to the first time, but I was looking at everybody who left. So I started making calls
that's smart.
to those people because I was like, how do you like it? Because what I realized is everybody had made a bounce. So they got to the first company, didn't know the right questions asked. So then they bounced to the next company. So I called all them and started building networks. And I got like 3 guys that were like, wherever you go, I'm going with you because this place sucks, right? So I finally found a company that was willing to bet on me. And I built like 4 branches out the gates pretty quickly, like within the first year. And then that company sucked. And I was like, their operations was bad. TRID was happening. And so they didn't really know how to handle that. So I went from like maybe closing 70% of our deals on time to nothing. So I finally figured out, through my research, I found out about loanDepot had bought iMortgage and that they were going to do this thing. So I decided to bet on them because they were local. Everything was happening locally. So I was like, if I have a problem, I could just walk into corporate and get something done.
Yeah.
That was big for me at the time. I don't care now, but at the time it was big. So, but when I left, everybody followed. And then I was like, okay, well, that's my value proposition. Like people are actually, there's some value that I'm able to give to them that they're actually following me. And then that's when it kind of just, started to evolve into what I'm doing now. Started with a branch. Then I expanded out to Phoenix, got a second branch, expanded out to Vegas, got a third, and all from like social networking, meeting people. I knew this guy, he was doing social. Why aren't you working for us? Then just started kind of culminating. And then I ended up with like 4 branches. And then so I think the company was like, well, we got to make him an area manager if we want him to keep, growing. So they made me an area manager. And then at the end of this year, I was the highest in profitability. We were the most like profitable to the entire company from a funding perspective. And so they gave me a few more territories. So now I have Hawaii, Wyoming, Utah, Arizona, Nevada as my territory. So now then they promoted me to a regional. So I officially broke into something that I didn't know that I ever necessarily wanted, but I felt like I needed to be there in order to make change in the industry, because I do think the industry needs some change, and I wanted to be at the table to help drive those changes.
Yeah, that's awesome. What do you think is the most value you add for the people that work for you? Like, because you're not originating loans, but you're a leader and you're helping originators with their business. Like, what do you think are some of the top value adds that you bring?
Well, so I thought about this a lot because I had an LO. He's a good friend of mine. He posts a lot of content, and he's pretty prolific in the amount that they're putting out. And he and his media guy pulled me aside and said, do you think your content's working? And I was like, I don't know. Like, by working, what do you mean? Like, are people calling you to come and work here? I'm like, I don't think that's ever going to happen. I don't think somebody's going to see my content and say, oh, I want to work for you. But if I call them after them seeing my content, the likelihood of them taking my call is much higher, right? So that to me that's the whole reason I wanted to build the brand around getting to know everybody in the marketplace, pumping out content, really to show people and demonstrate what we were doing from a like day-to-day perspective, so they could say like, well, my boss isn't doing that. My boss isn't giving me awards. My boss isn't, doing XYZ. So if I could show that, maybe I can start getting some interest. But I don't think anybody's ever going to call me and say, I'm Jeff. I'm $100 million, $150 million producer. I want to come and work. That's not happening from watching my content. So he said, but I think it should. I think it should happen. So who's your avatar and who are you going after? And I said, well, I think it's you. You're my avatar. This is a guy that went from like 15 million to 80 million in a year and a half. Like, you're who I want to work with, right? He's like, okay, well, here's what you did for me. You removed the barriers to build my confidence, to help me scale my business. That's what you do. And that's how you got to get your message across. And I was like, so what I realized is it's not necessarily that I'm in a room saying, do X, Y, Z. It's what's in your way? I'm going to remove that. Now let's go, right? And I'm going to remove that. Now let's go. And I realized that throughout my career, that's always been my take on leadership. It's if whatever's keep holding you back and you truly want to overcome that, then it's my job to help you remove it so that you have the confidence to go. Because I think LOs work in a crosshairs of 2 things, anxiety or confidence. So on your day-to-day, if you're high anxiety, you're not selling. If you're, so when I find LOs that are struggling, it's that anxiety piece that I'm latching into. Like, what's giving you anxiety?
Yeah.
If it's your process, then you're in the wrong place.
Yeah.
Or the problem is you. Like, it's one or the other, right? But we got to help you with that, and that's what I dig in. And having spent so much time on the operations side at Wells gives me the ability to I could whip open any pipeline and figure out where your problems are, because I spent time having to learn that from in a mass perspective. Like, Wells was doing massive business, it was nuts, but I think that's where I can help, is really removing the barriers to build confidence to help them scale their business.
Yeah, that's amazing. That's awesome that you've been able to hone in on that and then double down on that. Because if you've got people following you, that first move you made, you had a group of people follow you, you've grown exponentially. So obviously you're adding a lot of value and people are staying. Like, I don't see a lot of people quitting from your branches. I don't hear a lot about that. And there's a ton of turnover in our industry.
There is. And I think that, we're in a weird time in the market now, and I'm very superstitious. So I don't want to be overconfident and say we haven't had it, but we haven't had it. And I'll walk in tomorrow and have like 3 resignations on my desk. But it hurts, man. I will tell you, it's like a broken bone when it hurts. Like when somebody leaves you and you've poured in time with them and somebody else wrote them a check and they're kind of one-sided on that. That's where I'm like, I think that's the problem with our industry, because I don't know if it necessarily solves the problem in the long term.
Yeah.
Because I track everybody who's left me, and anybody could take the Pepsi. I'll take the Pepsi challenge on it. No one's outperformed what they did with me without. And I'm not saying that's me. I'm saying it's a team of people that help them. And a lot of times it's short-sighted. It's I chase a check versus I really wanted to grow my business.
Yeah.
And I think that's the difference. Because you and I have talked about this before. In fact, I posted something that originated from you. And I'm not calling out anybody, but you said something to me that always stuck with me, and I latched onto it as I get into the sales piece of recruiting. A lot of people have branch managers that compete with them, that have egos in the business and are like, I want you. I just don't want you to beat me. And so that's a different play from, when you're out recruiting and you're trying to find what's holding you back. Well, I don't get as much support as my branch manager does, and that's where you kind of start to see those things and those differentiating factors in the business.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm starting to do recruiting now, for my branch. And right now I just have this office space for my team. And so I want to start bringing LOs in and mentoring them and helping them with their business. But it's interesting as I'm talking like to some LOs, I'm talking to them, and they've got a mindset like they don't want to collaborate or share anything that they're doing. They've got this mindset, this kind of this like scarcity mindset of, hey, you're my competition. Like I've had a couple of people say to you're my competition. One of the things I'm doing right now is I'm just sharing a lot of my business plan as I'm talking to LOs. Like, this is what I'm working on. This is what I'm doing. And they're like, well, why would I discuss that with you? You're my competition. So why would you come on my podcast? We work at different mortgage companies, right? You could say, oh, we're in competition, but why would you come on my podcast and share, what's going on in your career and what you're doing?
I mean, I don't necessarily I don't necessarily look at it from the perspective of competition, right? So I'm looking at it from the perspective of relationship. And so for me, I think that's the problem with people. And I think that that's something that a lot of people won't overcome. Like if you could figure out truly how to build a relationship with somebody that you're willing to cultivate over time, then I think that a relationship, if you could do it better than me and we're going after the same person, by all means, they should go to you. If I do it because I like them and I'm building the relationship, and then you just write a bigger check than me and they go to you, then it's like, all right, well, shame on me for not writing the check, but I'm not willing to do that, right? Whatever. There's some algorithm in my head that's not allowing me to do that I'm not going to do it. But I don't look at it from that direction. I mean, my entire content is my business plan. Like I just build it by, like, I'm thinking about something and it resonates. I'm like, I need to share this with the world. Like, I want you to know this because I think it'll make you a better manager. And honestly, I think that we have to build I think our industry has a black eye and we're going to get worse over the next few years in this, but I think we have a black eye on kind of in that same realm of used car salesmen. And I think we need to bring honor to what we do on a day-to-day. And I don't think we can do that without collaborating. And I don't think people do it nearly enough. We have to be in the collaboration business.
I agree wholeheartedly. Yeah, I was in a coaching program for a number of years that I'm not in anymore. But one of the most valuable component of the program was you're in this program of 450 other top originators, and everybody's sharing everything that they do. It's like 100% open book on what each person is doing. And if you're an originator and you're not in a program, you're missing, and you're not like communicating with other peers in the industry, you're missing so much because there's so much that we can learn from each other. And I just feel like, especially like in our marketplace, for example, is huge. I mean, we need the tiniest little sliver of the loans to have an abundant career.
Agreed.
But if we're not talking to and collaborating with others in the industry, we're missing so much that we could learn.
Agreed. I mean, like, I mean, every company has their flat spots, and I also think that a lot of people are angling somehow, right? So like, I'll reach out to somebody, I'll cold call somebody today, and I'll say, hey, you're doing amazing, you're in my market, let's meet. And they're like, I don't want to take the call, I don't want to meet, I'm not looking to move. And I'm like, no, honestly, I'm not trying to recruit you. I do mean this. Like, I just want to get to know you because I see you've only been in the industry like 3 years, and you're already doing 20 million. That's pretty remarkable if over 50% of that is purchase. And then they're like, well, how do you know that? Well, I researched it. Like, I have data, right? And I want to know you because there's a story behind that. Like, how did you end up here? And if I can go from that angle, usually by the time I meet with them, then they start sharing their problems. And then I'm like, okay, could I really help? Do I like them? Like, are they cool? Do you look like a pain in the ass? Do you look like your drama? Then I'm going to back off. But if you're cool and I want to hang out with you and I truly can help you, then I'm going to go deep on that relationship. So I think overall people have to be collaborating and building relationships. And if they don't, they are going to stunt their growth. I mean, I 100% think that people will not be able to get to the level of production that they want to without collaboration with other people or having mentors or programs where they can, learn more from.
Yeah. That's great. Well, so we talked a little bit about social media a few minutes ago. What do you, because you've leaned into it for so long, I mean, what's your recommendation to the average originator with social media? What should they be doing in that space? Should they make big changes in that space? Do you think that's still the direction to go?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not going to be so bold to say, if you don't do it, you're going to fail. I think that people will figure this out. But if you want to scale your business massively, if you want to get more eyes on your business and more eyes on you, the cheapest, fastest way to do it is to pick up your phone and record yourself and start talking about the things that you're good at. So every loan officer is good at something. I have a loan officer in my office. She knows every down payment assistance program, just happens to know them, just leaned in on it and knows all of them. So I'm like, talk about that, and that's what you hear talking about. Or, you learn something and you get it out there. And I think if we have an army of people educating the masses on what they do and how they do it, then everybody has these micro audiences that follow them. And then it evolves. It starts off with, here's the top 10 things you need to know about buying a mortgage, to just talking about you and what you like and what your life is about. And because I think while people need a mortgage, people are more interested in doing business with people than they are with companies.
Yeah.
And I think especially in our market, like for instance, I Facebook everybody. So like if I get a name like, hey, call this person about XYZ, first thing I do is Facebook them. And if I Facebook them and all their content is about political BS, then I won't call them because I'm like, I have nothing of interest with you if this is how you're going to use your platform, right? Or they're private and they don't want anybody to see them. Like, well, that's weird, like, I mean, that, so there's different things because I think social media has now become your resume. And so like if let's say you're working with a realtor and they give your name and 3 other names out and they Google all of those, well, I'm going to go with the guy who's talking about mortgages and, teaching other loan officers how to do it. That's a giver. I want to meet this person because they're sharing ideas. So I do think it's a big piece of how you build your business in this marketplace. I would highly recommend it, but I have seen some that are just so bad that I'm like, yeah, you probably shouldn't be doing this. You're going to have to figure something else out.
Yeah. Better off to keep it and not as a liability. Only use it if it's an asset. Yeah. Yeah, well, I mean, I've always been somewhat engaged on social, but I've never like really leaned in on it and like spent money to get someone helping me putting out professional content, that kind of stuff. And so I started doing that this year. So I'm probably like 90 days in and like a whole social plan. And it's a lot easier than I thought it would be. Like the information that the average LO needs to share on social and what they're able to share, they pretty much know all of that information off the top of their head. But we take for granted how much we know and how little the average consumer knows. Because as I've started putting out a lot of content, I'm getting all kinds of people, like people I went to high school with, and clients in the marketplace, and then friends of clients, and all these people reaching out to me like, I really like your videos, I like the content you're putting out. And to me, I'm just explaining the most basic things that I take for granted knowing, but I take it for granted because I've been in the business for 16 years. So it's been easier to come up with the content than I thought it would be. Because we have so much more knowledge than we give ourselves credit for having, I think.
Well, yes, and I will say that I think there's two things that LOs make the mistake on. Number one, not doing it. But if they do it, the first mistake I see them make is overcomplicating it. Like I used to work in call centers, and I would hear guys down the aisle talking about the bond and the yield, and I'm like, dude, they don't understand that. They don't even know that the rate's bad today or good today. They're calling you for advice, right? So all you have to do, if you say, yeah, rates suck, then they suck. If the rates are good, then they're good. It all depends on you're making an assumption that customer knows, right? So I think at the end of the day, it's how do you help this individual? And so picking an avatar, picking your audience and saying, okay, I'm giving content to this individual. And you could even put a name on them. Like their name could be Carlos. And Carlos has a background of XYZ, and he's male, and he votes this way. And you could kind of just like really picture him. And then you're talking to that one person. And the moment you kind of just understand what Carlos knows and what he's trying to get to and what he's trying to accomplish, that's where your content is. If you focus on that, then you're going to have a bunch of Carloses coming to you to do business because it's engaging with them. LO's overcomplicated. They talk about things that nobody cares about. Like, honestly, I don't know. Like, I think for me as a consumer, all I really care about is how much do you want me to put down?
Yep.
How much do I have to write a check for at closing?
Yep.
What's my payment going to be?
Yep.
Right. And if you can make those two things make sense, maybe I care about the rate, but those are going to be my most important. Can you help me with those two? People way overcomplicated. But then honestly, I just want to talk to somebody that I want to hang out with. So like, you're a golfer. I'm not a golfer, but if I was a golfer, I'd want to do business with you because now we can talk about that and you look like you're pretty good at it. So maybe you can show me a few things, right? So like, that's where then you start to build what you're trying to do and who you're trying to attract. But I think LOs missed that.
Yeah.
But I can't wait to talk to you a year from now and to see how it's evolved.
Yeah.
Because it won't be where it is today, and neither will mine. But it is an evolution of how it changes, and I think that's going to be really cool to see.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm excited about it. It's been an interesting journey in just a short window of time. Like I'm doing once a week, I'm doing a guest podcast. Once a week, I'm doing a solo podcast. Mm-hmm. And so I did a solo podcast.
That's a lonely place, man.
Yeah.
That's a lonely place.
But the content has been interesting with it because like I did one a few weeks ago. I just went over basic mortgage terms. Yeah. It's like a 16-minute podcast where I went through like DTI.
That's awesome.
Every consumer calls DTI, debt to ratio. And like things like that. I just explained out all the most basic mortgage terms. Now I send that out when I send out instructions to submit an application. Here's a link to my podcast, Common Mortgage Terms. Check it out.
That's awesome.
It's done. It's repeatable. And what other LO who's my competition with that buyer is going to be sending them a link to a podcast where they're explaining
right?
basic
Very few.
terms.
I mean, if any. And so that's where I think, whether it's YouTube or podcasting or whatever it is, because that one clip, right? Like even if you did a 15-minute on the LE or you did whatever, right? All those basic mortgage terms, and you now have the podcast, you now have CRM, you now have text messaging. You can now split that up for content, right? So you now have a massive amount of content from 16 minutes, you said. And now you can put that on a YouTube. And it now goes in, it's baking in the back end, your algorithm to find Jeff Smith, through Google. So it compounds. And so, and you may not see it now, but I promise the people, if you were to do a graph on how much content were you putting out to how much business you were getting, you'll see it both grow because of the content you're putting out.
Oh, okay.
Because the biggest thing I'll say is like, I don't think that you'll see people calling you necessarily out the gates like, I saw your content, I want to do a mortgage. But when they do a mortgage, they're calling you and they may not even say it's because of your content. And that's the piece. That's why you can't necessarily tie the two together.
Yeah.
But what you're doing is you're building you're building confidence in your marketplace when you're making content. So think about it. How many people own, from your perspective, how many people own content in Arizona? Like LOs, do you see doing it?
Very few on the LO
Right?
side. Very
5, 10 that are good and own it and are
Yeah.
consistent. So that's where, and it's for the taking. Even in Arizona, in a pretty progressive like city,
Yeah.
I mean, it's in Phoenix. It's pretty crazy that there's not that many.
It is interesting, and like real estate agents, I think as a whole do a way better job with content than LO. Why do you think that is?
Well, because I think it's sexier. I mean, like, I rather go look at houses and post me at a cool house than me with stacks of paper, right? And looking at, but I do think that if you can figure out how to make what we do fun, and show, like, as you're building your office and building that journey of growth, I think that's going to attract more and more people. And look, I can, if I were a producing manager trying to grow it, I'd be honest about it. Like, I'm trying something new. I want to share my ideas with you. If you're this LO from here to here, and I think I can help you, let's, like, just being honest about that. I think you'll probably get calls from it, you know, and that's where I think it changes. Whereas other people are afraid to even get on camera and saying that. You're not afraid.
Yeah.
And I think that's where, I think that fear and that shame is what holds people back from doing it. They're afraid their friend from high school is going to call them and make fun of them.
Which is sad when you think about it. We're all like, we live in a crazy world. Like,
I don't give a shit
everybody
what anybody says about me. Like, I don't care. Like, I just, like, what I have, I'm sure I have haters. I do not care.
Yeah.
Because I got to keep posting, you know?
And I think that's you're in a very, very small minority, because the average person is super insecure, and they've got their own worries and their own self-doubts, and like, everybody's battling that. It's like, it's funny. We're all like walking around this world worried about what everybody thinks, but like one guy's worried about what he thinks about him, but the other guy's worried about what he thinks about, and it's just, we're all like insecure in that way.
It is. I mean, there is that one person that when I first started doing content, I don't do it nearly as much, but I always have that one or two friends in the back of my mind that I know are going to talk shit later about it. Like, I'll get a text message like, oh, like, whatever, and I'm like, dude, I don't care. Like, I don't care. Like, just, I already knew you were going to say that, and thank you, for proving me right. But now it's like respect, because, like, I care more about growing my business than I do somebody else's opinion of me.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, all I care about is helping. If I can help an LO take their business from 10 million to 100 million, and because I helped them and I did something in their lives that was different, not only will that build loyalty, but then you grow an army of that. And I rather talk about that and building and helping build business than to worry about what anybody thinks of me. And I think that's what that a lot of people have to get out of their mindset of caring what other people think. But there is, I did an event, and I saw somebody come in and command the room, and she basically, they described it the other day for me, but they said she put the room in a trance. I think they said that, or hypnotized the room. But I never saw somebody come into a room where nobody really, they were kind of with her, and then just before you knew, people were crying, her whole message was around that, about everything that we're afraid to do is from somebody planted a seed of shame in our lives a long time ago.
Yeah.
And we're still dealing with that.
Yes.
And we have to overcome that.
Yeah.
And some people don't understand it. Some people just, even in like my company, there's people who don't understand what I'm doing. Like, why, like, are you building your brand? Or are you building, what are you doing? And, so it's a weird thing.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, it's the social human dynamic. It's very complicated. What do you think, or who do you follow that you really like on social? Like, who do you think in our industry is doing it really well? Who you follow? Who's like, this person's a model that other people in our industry should look at?
Well, I do live in a bubble, Jeff. So like I have seen, like, the person that I will say is 2 steps ahead of me that I kind of follow from like more of a mechanical perspective. So it's not necessarily what they're saying, but when I look at their background, or I look at like the footage and how it's edited and how the words are and how they do their text and all that stuff. And we actually use the same people as my guy out in in Las Vegas, Sean Uehara, he has a YouTube, and it's like he gets like 60 leads a month from it, and it's all like, I mean, they're qualified people that look at him like a mini celebrity and are like, hey, I want to use you. I'm not even shocked. I just want you because I've been watching your stuff. I'm moving from California to Vegas. So I've been watching your stuff. It's all about Vegas. So, help me out. Right. So I watch that and I'm like, okay. And honestly, I don't watch a lot of content because I don't have the time for it. But, so I, like when I hire people out, I'll have them tell me like, okay, try this, try that, use this type of music, that sort of thing.
What was that guy's name again?
Sean Uehara. He works for loanDepot, but he's out of Vegas, so he's a pretty big producer in Vegas. But so then there's like now on a non-mortgage side, and it's the probably the one person that I actually watch and I'm entertained by it is Bradley. And he's doing some amazing things, and he has a prescription on how to build content, and it's really good if you can follow that guy. I think he's really good. And then there's Shay Rowbottom, who I was mentioning earlier when I did the event. She's more of a LinkedIn. She was named Forbes' highest like influencer on LinkedIn.
Oh wow!
And I don't know if that was based off of income or just how they what they use to. But she is a badass, and she gives a lot of good information on how to get out of your head and not care about what society thinks. Like she did this whole thing on Roe versus Wade, which is like a topic that no one would touch, and she's like, fuck it, I'm touching it.
Wow.
She's like the first one to go after it, and I'm like, well, good, God bless you, God bless you, because I'm not even touching that. So so and I think Bradley does the same thing. I think that they have a way to push their political agenda. Even if I don't agree with it, I'm not turned off by it. They just do it in a more of a charming way that I'm like, it's cool if I don't agree with you, but overall, the way that they're pushing out content is phenomenal, and like I love watching them.
Yeah, that's cool. What else? What other things do you think LOs should be focused on in their business now? So now here we are into a rising rate environment. We've got short inventory, although that's starting to improve a little bit now. So social obviously is one of the pillars. What else do you think LOs should be leaning into right now?
Well, I think number one, if you go back to the basics, right? Like, so every LO should, I know this about, I've studied LOs, 100 times over on what makes them successful and what makes them not successful. And I think it's equally important to build a business plan. Like, number one, get that out of the way. You got to know where you want to go, and you got to have a roadmap on how to get there. But as you're building that, I think not just asking yourself, what do I got to do to make myself successful? But what are the things that'll fuck up my success? And I don't think a lot of people look at that. And when you look at it from that perspective, you'll be amazed of how the ideas come. Well, if I don't call my database, I'm not going to make, that'll fuck up my business. If I don't, have a listing agent, strategy, that'll fuck up my business, right? But like, if you think about all those things, then it's like, okay, well then just do the inverse of that, and that's your business plan. Just do all the things, right? If I don't show up to work on Monday because I have a bad case of the Mondays, well, that'll fuck up my business. Well, okay, well, let's show up on Monday.
Show up on Monday,
right? Like, so there's all those things that I think that LOs need to do. But I think the most important thing is you have to start with a business plan to know where you're going to go, and then you have to build accountabilities around that, and you have to be willing. You have to be willing to sacrifice certain things of your comfort in order to win, because I've said this a few other times, but our brain does this thing to us that as soon as we start to go out of our comfort zone, it tells you like, get back. I don't like the way this feels. I don't like it. You're better off. It starts to like rationalize not winning. And it's a weird thing that your brain does. And so if you could push through that, then your brain recognizes that win, and it's become a new goal. And so now you've bypassed that. It's like when you're working out, when you first start working out, you're like, I'll never bench, 250. And then all of a sudden you work your way and then you do it. You're like, wow, I could never bench 300. And then you do it, and then it's like, holy shit, what's the limit, And so, but then people stop and then they go backwards. And so I think LOs have to find those things that that are going to fuck them up and double down and push through them.
Yeah.
And they got to have people around them that are cheering them on. You know, quick side note. I did, earlier this year, I did an event called Breakthrough. And I remember when we first started going at it, I pulled a group together of these trusted people, advisors, if you will, and pitched the idea. And they were like, we got to do it. We got to do it. And then the first call we had, I was like, guys, are we really going to do this? Like, I don't really know if I want to do this anymore. It sounds like a lot of work. And, you know, I'm going to this new job and I don't have time to be promoting it, blah, blah, blah. And no one like even listened. Nobody even like responded to my question. They were just like, okay, well, on the agenda, we got it. Like, and then like the first 3 calls, it kept being me trying to talk this group out of it, and they were not having it. And if I had not done that, I mean, I think that was one of the most successful things that we pulled off, was doing an event. And we, to this day, I'll still have people that hit us up that are like, in fact, I have 3 or 4 people that came to work for us that were just like, we were so moved by this that we wanted to be in the room with you guys. And so it was one of the best things that we could have done. And we inspired a lot of people. But truth be known, my brain was like kept rationalizing. In fact, even as we were getting like towards the end, I started thinking, well, maybe we can get a smaller venue, you know, because I don't know if I'm going to be able to fill the venue. And not only did we sell out, like it ended up being a fucking major event, and we got so lucky with it. And, you know, we're able to inspire like 125 people, but the entire way I was like, kind of like, I don't know if I want to do this. It's weird how your brain does that. But if you could push through it and surround yourself with people who are not going to hear you and going to keep pushing you, then I think you could win. I just think there's a lot of lost loan officers out there that are underappreciated and undervalued.
Yeah.
That need some hand holding.
Yeah.
And
totally.
need some support.
Totally. Yeah. I have a little sign that sits on my windowsill. It says "Get uncomfortable."
Yeah.
Because every time I do something that feels way out of my comfort zone, it ends up being like a game changer in my business. But getting myself to do it is hard to do.
It is.
Because you're putting yourself in a position where you may fail, you know, and then you've got to be okay with failure or getting rejected or, you know, some embarrassment, or, you know, if you had hosted the event and it wasn't a success and you feel embarrassed, right? Like you're worried about how people are going to perceive it. But most of the time when you push through something like that and you give it a full effort, then it ends up being a success. And you've just elevated your floor. Your floor goes from here to here.
That's the best way to articulate it. That's what I was trying to say, because I think we all have a floor. And the more you move that and you keep elevating it, then the sky's the limit. But if you're waking up every day and you're comfortable and you want to stay comfortable, then I don't know, maybe I'm not the best partner for you, you know, overall. And that's okay. That's cool. You know, like I'm down with that.
Yeah.
You know? So.
Yeah, I love that. What qualities do you see among top 1% originators versus the other 99% or lower tier originators? Like what characteristics do you think those top tier LOs possess? I
will tell you that I've been studying this for a long time. And for me, because I have a top 1% that refuses to get on social. Now, he won't tell me he refuses. He's like, yeah, I'll get that tomorrow. He won't do it. But he's my top guy. And you know, he's just a badass. He's just good. And now I just say you're the best kept secret, you know, because nobody knows how much you're doing. Or they do know, and you know, he's super loyal that he's not going anywhere. But I think what I will tell you is they show up. I mean, you know, every top performer is in the office right now. They're in the office in the morning. They're in the office at night. Somebody told me the other day, like, yeah, I don't do Mondays. Like, I just work from home. I was like, yeah. And you will continue not being a top 1%er. Like, cool. You know, like, but if you want to win, you got to show up. You got to be engaged. You got to have a routine in order to set the stage for what the rest of the week is going to look like. But if you're all over the place, you can't gain momentum. It just won't happen. And I've seen it over and over. And people will say, well, how am I supposed to, you know, somebody will say, I always hear like, they want me in the office, but you know, I'm out in the streets. No, you're not. You're at home.
Yeah.
You're at home. You're doing something, but you're not out in the streets. Cause I can see by your credit pulls, you're not out in the streets.
Yeah.
You know, so I think the biggest thing is show up.
Yeah.
You have to show up.
Yeah. Yeah. In our industry being very entrepreneurial, and I think real estate agents the same thing, you know, some people need someone pushing them. Like there's some personalities where people are just self-driven and they'll go do it. But other people need someone pushing them, or they need someone to chase. And without that, then their habits kind of just start to slip. And I see that happen to myself too from time to time, where like I start getting comfortable. I'm like, all right, things are rolling. You know, let me play a little more golf, and I'm going to get in like 30 minutes later. And then before you know it, you're getting in an hour
You're in a
later.
free fall.
Yeah.
And your pipeline shows it.
Yes.
You know, it's a weird thing, but if you could, I mean, that's the thing about being a human. Sorry to interrupt you, but like, I think that's the thing about being human is that if you could recognize it and get back on track, that's okay. I mean, you're going to have those moments, and sometimes you need those moments. Like, like there was a point where, I think it was like a year ago, I just stopped doing content. I was like, I'm over it. Like for like a month, I did like 10, I don't know, I want to say like 10 days worth of work and in like 2 days. And then I just gave it to the person that pushes out my content at the time. And I was like, I'm done. I like I didn't comment on any, I just got out of it. And it was like probably the best thing I ever did. Yeah. Cause then I had a fresh perspective come back to it. But you know, I think that it's okay to slide, but then you got to pick yourself back up and get at it again. And I think that's just part of the process. Yeah. I think it is.
I agree. And I think that, I think about my own business, you know, last couple of years have been amazing, obviously. Now we're into a completely different market. And I was going to go back to what I've been doing for a long time, which is just pounding the phone relentlessly and just phone. And I'm like, this year I was just like, I don't want to just pound the phone and have that be all I do. I'm like, I pound the phone and chase realtors. That was all I've done for the last like 8 years. You know, I'm like, I need to do something else that's going to get myself excited about the business again. So I literally rewrote my entire business plan. I rewrote the whole thing, and I went all in on social, spending a lot of time going after financial advisors. I'm still pursuing real estate agents and maintaining the relationships that I have with agents. But now I'm doing a lot of LinkedIn to get meetings, a lot of social to get meetings, putting out a lot of content. And it's like I feel revitalized because I'm doing some different things. Like I've got a different plan now, and like I'm able to attack the business in a little bit different way. And just that little bit of a switch up has given me something new to focus on, and it's got me excited.
Well, it's operating a different set of your brain. Now, there's probably somebody that can, Renee Rodriguez or somebody who explain this better than me, but you know, if you're pounding the phones, you become more robotic around the pounding of the phones, right? So if I could create content and exercise a creative piece of my brain in a different fashion and think about it from that perspective, now I'm creating something. But what's weird that happens is, you know, and I will tell you, like, people will tell me, like, after they start, I started because I saw your content, you know, and it helped. And so if you look at it from more of a smaller realm, because I'm very like I'm targeting a very specific individual, whereas sometimes I'm jealous that I wish I was a loan officer again so that I can target because everybody's a client, you know, potentially. But I'm very like, I have a subset of people that I'm going after. But I bet the more content you produce at the end of the year, more people tell you, yeah, I used you because of your content. And that's where it pays off. But it's a journey, and it takes consistency. It takes a lot of hard work and creativity. But I think if you can mix that into your day to day, then you're having fun again. Yeah. Because you're exercising a marketing, you know, piece. And I'll end with this. I think on this subject, but I think there's a lot of good people who are good once they get the credit pull and they know how to take that customer through the process. Yeah. The hardest thing is getting that credit pull. Yes. It's everything that goes into that, right? So that's why a lot of assistants think they can do your job because they're like, oh, well, I do the whole thing. The hardest part is not the whole thing. The hardest part is everything that happened before that credit pull. It's true. And so how does an LO get creative enough to maximize their activities to get the credit pull? And I personally couldn't do that without content. Yeah. You know, or think that it would be easy to do it without content, because that's the game changer in terms of your client confidence. Yeah. Is they see what you're doing and they're like, I'm not even shopping this dude.
Yeah.
You know, I'm just gonna use them because they're cool.
Yes.
And that's how you switch from becoming Costco to a Neiman Marcus in the lending business, because I'm not just going to walk into a Costco and get a mortgage. I'm going to use you and not shop you because you know you look legit.
Yes.
And you're helping a lot of people. So I think that'll be the big difference.
Yeah, that's cool. Well, yeah, and I've leaned all in on this. We were talking about this a little bit before the show, that I've got, one of my best agent partners. Every referral I get from him or anybody who's ever joined his team, I always ask, like, any client that calls me, I always ask, well, how did you hear about us? Oh, well, I was referred by so-and-so. Well, how do you know so-and-so? I follow him on social media.
There you go.
And
they may,
consistent.
what's weird is they may not even tell him that.
Yeah.
Because it's a weird thing. Like, I may not tell you, like, I saw your stuff. Like, even though I did, and that's how I met you, like, I feel weird saying that. But it's weird, but they may not tell him that, but they're totally cool telling you that.
That's interesting.
But it's amazing how it works.
Yeah.
Like a lot of people I'll meet and they'll be like, yeah, I saw your stuff. I'm like, well, because I remember all my likes. Like, I know who's watching it. So I'm like, if, but people won't like it. They'll watch it.
Yes.
And you'll notice that you'll have like 1,000 views or 1,000 views of a video with 2 likes on it. And you're like, it's because they don't want their boss to see that they watched it.
Yeah.
That's why. Yeah. So whatever, man.
Well, you were mentioning haters earlier. There's a couple guys I golf with. We like to really give each other a hard time, and we play some pretty big money games out on the course. But lately, they've been like, "Dude, I am so sick of you being in my phone.
Yeah.
I can't get you out of my
good.
phone.
Yeah.
Like, it's so
Awesome.
annoying." And
Yeah.
I'm like, "Well, don't watch it if it's annoying, you know." But that's powerful, right? Because they don't like any of my stuff. Now they're starting to, and I can see when they watch my stories. But they're not even intentionally putting me into their feed, but the algorithms for the social platforms put me in there, and they can't get me out of their phone. So you think about how people spend so much time on their phone, right? Like the average.
But
person,
who are they doing a mortgage with?
Right.
Who are they doing a mortgage with? There's no fucking way they're not going to use you. Sorry, if you don't allow cousin, you get edit it out. But like, who is not going to use you?
Yes.
If you're hitting them, they have to, right?
to.
And then they're playing golf with you.
Yeah. It's just a win.
yeah.
You're just attracting the people you want to. Yeah, totally.
It is funny. I get that from my friends a lot, dude. I'm so tired of and it's funny. It's like, I'm going to keep going, man. I'm going to keep going, but I do love it. And I feel bad because I'm like, it has nothing to do with getting a mortgage,
Yeah.
I'm trying to recruit people, but like my friends, I'm just stuck in their feed.
Yeah. But you're in their feed because they're watching it. If they scrolled right past it, eventually you wouldn't be in there.
Yeah.
They're seeing some of it, and that's why you're in there.
Well, what's funny is, like, to the hater comment, there's Christina Smallhorn is a YouTuber, and she's a badass YouTuber. She's actually coaching me on my YouTube channel.
Oh, nice.
And she's like, your haters will watch you. They'll hate watch you more than your other. But she's like, I'm cool with that. I don't block them because they'll watch it. Like, she can go in, like, YouTube has so much great analytics, but she could see how much they watch. She's like, I love it because they're just views. They keep hitting me.
Yeah.
And she's at the point where she's getting YouTube checks, and she's like, yeah, but I love hate watchers. And I'm like, I never thought about that. But it's funny. I was talking to you about Blake, and, I don't think Blake will ever get this far into this podcast, but, I was like hating on his stuff. And then I started reading it, and I was like, I liked it so much that I called him to do a podcast.
Yeah.
But it's a fun, but I kept seeing it, and I was like, oh, here's another Blake one. And then finally I read it, and I was like, this guy's really smart. I actually like what he's saying, and I want to meet him, and so, I was hate looking at his stuff that made me want to connect with him. And that's how it evolved.
Isn't that funny where I think there's a connection there a lot of times where if our brain first goes into defense mode and we're like, oh, I don't like that. Fuck that. I don't like that. But like somewhere deep in our subconscious, our brain's like, yeah, I like that. But our subconscious mind is like, no, that's bullshit. I don't like that.
Yeah.
And then we stay engaged with it. And then maybe we never come around because our conscious mind won't let us. But there's some part of your mind that likes it.
Well, like Gary Vee, like nobody heard Gary Vee the first time and liked him, but then you kept hearing it, and he was like everywhere, and it was like, all right, fuck it, I like this guy, and then I really like this guy, and it's the same thing. It's like most people get that, like, I don't like the way I feel, and it is, but now I'm leaning into it. To your point, so there's another guy, Do you know who Renee Rodriguez is?
Yeah.
So I was just like sick of it. Like everybody's like loves this dude, and I'm like, what's the big draw to this guy, right? So I asked my boss, Alec spoke at one of his events, and I was like, okay, what's the big deal about this dude? Like everybody's at this event. I would have gone out of sheer FOMO, but I had another event that I had to be at, so I would have totally gone because all my friends were going, and so he was like, no, dude, he walked me through it, what he does, and so I fucking reached out to Renee and was like, I was a hater. And I'll admit, like, but I now want to meet you. And so now we're doing a podcast, and it's like,
nice.
So it's one of those things where I'm like, okay, why do I not like, what is the deal with this person I don't like? Maybe it's the way they talk or something, or maybe I'm just a hater, you know what I mean? Like, and I'm like, now I need to figure out why, so, but it's funny. And I have no problem admitting that, but I do think that when I get that feeling, I'm now going to just go meet them. Like whenever I feel like, why do I hate that? I'm going to go meet them. Cause that's the reason why I'm like, to your point, there's a defense mecanism there that's pushing me away from it.
There's something there that like deep down you're liking. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, one final question for you, Chris. What do you know now that you wish you would have known 10 years ago?
And that's a good question. I think the biggest thing for me is, so you ever, when you were younger, you ever dream of winning the lottery?
Yeah.
Like you think about what you would buy with the lottery, right? I used to always do that in my head, and it would like right before I go to bed, it would fill up like a good 10 minutes of all the things I would do. If
that's
I
a
won
fun
lottery.
little fantasy path to go down.
It's a fun fantasy path to go down. Yeah, I agree. And so I think we all have limitations in our head by the way we were brought up. So I didn't grow up in a family that had money. Like my dad sold tires and my mom worked in a factory. And so we were very, very, very humble in the way that we were brought up. And so I had limitations of what it meant because nobody in my family was like, successful in a financial way. Right. And so I think if I could go back and redo it, I wish that somebody had said to me, just visualize what you want to be successful. Visualize the car you want to drive. Visualize where you want to live. Visualize this and just keep thinking about it over and over. And if you do that, it will happen. Because the moment I did that, everything opened up for me. I would just limit myself. I would limit like my actions when I got home from work I would get home and do what my dad did. He would get home and grab a drink and sit on the couch and watch TV for like 5 hours, And I can't do that shit anymore. But I did that for years and years until finally I had to change my whole way of, doing it. And when I did, I started taking that time and applying it to something more, useful. And when both my wife and I started doing that, then the world opened up to us. I mean, we started investing in, we have so many, like she's a boss. We had like 13 different businesses. And all because we just took that time and reallocated it to more, more important things. And so if I could do it all over again, I would have started that process in my brain sooner, because if you could visualize where you want to be and just focus on it over and over and over, you will get there. And you have to get there. You got to taste it. And so whenever I'm coaching a loan officer, I usually will ask that question, like, what do you want to hit? Oh, 50 million. Do you taste it? Like, do you believe it? Are you just giving me that number because you think I want to hear it? Like, do you taste it? Yes. Then let's go. I'll get you there. But if you don't taste it and you don't believe in yourself, you won't get there.
Yeah. Yeah.
I wish I knew that.
That's awesome. Yeah. Yeah. I did. So title of my podcast is Fairways and Finance. Mm-hmm. So I like to link.
I always want to tell you, I've been wanting to comment and say I should be cross country and finance.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, that's funny. That's awesome. I never really thought about that.
I've been wanting to tell you that so much. They're like, I start typing. I'm like, I'm not gonna, because he's gonna be a dick. I don't want to say that.
That's really funny. Well, okay. What's funny with the golf swing? So like golf is a very technical game.
Yes.
Like you have to have the right technique to hit a golf ball well. There's like, if you look at every professional player,
Agreed.
Yeah, at impact, they have different ways of getting impact, but at impact, their golf club is in almost the same position because it's physics. Like the ball has to be hit at a certain angle with the club for it to go where you want it to go. Well, what's interesting, I've done a lot of golf instruction over the last couple of years, and one of the things with golf, getting your golf swing in the right spot, is that your subconscious mind knows that, like, if you have it out here and you're trying to shallow it out, if you don't take the right steps to shallow it out, your subconscious mind won't let you do it because it knows you'll just swing and miss.
Yeah.
And so, like, with the visualization, what you're talking about, our subconscious is so strong that if we don't feed it those images, it won't figure out a way to get there. But if we visualize and we really start to just program that subconscious element of our mind of, I want this, I want that, then all of a sudden our brain starts working in the background of, like, how am I going to get there? And it's crazy, but that's, I mean, to your point, that's how it works.
It's funny you brought up the golf one, because look this up, and I wish I remember the guy's name, but there's a guy who went to jail, and he visualized golf entire 18 holes every day he was there, like, and visualized how he would hit, how he never played golf in his life. He liked it, but had never played in his life. He visualized it every day and, like, just studied it and studied it and studied it. And then when he got out of prison, played a perfect game of golf. Like, look this up. This is like a thing. Like, they studied him, you know, because and a lot of golfers, they do that before they go and play, is visualize where they're going to hit the ball. And there's all these studies done on how they said, I just went up there and it's almost as if the club just did the work, you know? And so, that visualization, man, is, you know, but if you play into your limitations, right? If you play into, like, I'm limited in this hit, I'm never going to get a hole in one ever in my life, then you're never going to get one.
Yes.
But if you're like, I want to get it. So my son, it's so funny because I tell him this all the time. Like, he plays soccer, and he is, before he got a goal, he's like, I want to get it. I was like, you just don't want it bad enough. Like, do you want it bad? Are you mad? And he's like, no, I'm not, like, you know, it'd be cool if I got. I was like, okay, well, you're not going to get it until you're pissed, until you want it. Go take it. Yeah. And the day, like, on the way there, he's like, I'm getting a fucking goal today. Like, I mean, that's basically what he was saying, is I'm going to get it. And boom, he got it.
That's amazing.
And it was like, cause he just visualized that he was going to do it. And I'm like, oh, that was pretty cool. Like, hopefully I planted a seed for the rest of his life. I don't know if I did, but I do think that visualization thing, man, is huge.
Yeah, it's hard for people to understand it or believe it, because it's not it's an abstract, like,
it is.
It's an
it's
abstract
a weird
concept.
thing to tell somebody.
Yeah, you can't just, like, prove it, but it's real. You know, it's there.
It is real.
Yeah.
Well,
Chris,
congrats, brother.
Yeah, thanks, man. And I really appreciate you taking the time to come on the show. Like, you're somebody I've known for a long time.
Man.
You've been a mentor for me for many years.